At 3:17 a.m., my phone lit the ceiling pale blue and congratulated me for sending $48,500 from our HELOC to Travis County Title Company. The push notification from USA looked like a countdown for a life I had been living without knowing it, complete with a settlement time of 9:00 a.m. and a note that my authorization had been captured by DocuSign at 2:58 a.m. At that hour, the only thing I had signed was a truce with sleep. Our townhouse sits in the Mueller development on the east side of Austin, within jogging distance of the lake where herons behave like they own the water, and a farmer's market where I sell my misprinted planners at a discount because someone else's typo shouldn't be a landfill's problem. The front room is both a staging area and a small warehouse for my Etsy shop, a shame-free mess of cardboard tissue, stickers, and colored pens that claim to make anyone's life easier if they start on a Monday. The kitchen window faces a sidewalk where strollers outnumber bikes during daylight and where coyotes pretend to be shadows after midnight. My husband, Marco, is a firefighter with Austin Fire Department Station 14 on Cameron, the 24 on and 48 off rhythm that lectures you into accepting it. Our son, Theo, is 7 and tall for his age. On good days, he still believes adult promises are reinforced concrete. Money doesn't speak in our house so much as it taps politely and then tries again when we pretend not to hear it. The last 2 years have been a spill of invoices and repairs with a few bright checks like confetti. Marco's truck swallowed a transmission in July. The property tax on our narrow rectangle of land jumped in a way that made my throat feel crowded. My mother's biopsy slid co-insurance into our mailbox like a dare. I picked up staging jobs for realtors in Crestview who swear brass hardware can redeem any kitchen. I packed planners until the labels blurred. Marco tacked extra shifts onto his schedule or covered for a buddy whose knee had opinions. We used to make fun of couples who divided tasks into blue jobs and pink jobs. Lately, our list had one color: urgent. When Yuza told me my signature had given away almost 50 grand in the middle of the night, I stood in the blue light and remembered every time a small doubt had asked me to sit down next to it. The day after New Year's, I found a folded pamphlet from a downtown tower called The Independent wedged between coupons on our counter photos of a glass deck and a pool that pretends it is a river with more rules. The name of the building is a joke when you have a mortgage. A week later, Uber had emailed a receipt to our shared address for a 1:41 a.m. ride from that same tower to a storage facility on Airport Boulevard. I confronted Marco with the nerve of a question mark, and he called it a rideshare glitch because he had used Uber at the station for a supply run. The screenshot lived in my phone like an unpaid bill. The same week, Theo's sitter, Ava, mentioned offhand that our spare gate, the one we'd retired after Theo finally overcame his toddler sense of physics, was in our garage again when she had thought she'd donated it with the other baby things. I told myself she had mistaken a similar metal lattice and that the pile of unused objects in any suburban garage can take any shape. I pressed my finger into the user app and blocked the transfer, feeling that new kind of power you get when you compress your life into case numbers. The freeze-generated reference TCC HELOC minus 11,284 and a promise that the wire would be held pending an in-person ID check. The DocuSign envelope ID glowed on my screen like a flavor of panic I didn't know I could taste. The audit trail listed my name, my email, my exact signature, cultivated over years of signing permission slips and PR release forms for photos at craft fairs. Two-factor authentication had been bypassed via an approved device, a term that felt like an insult at 2:58:13 a.m. The IP geolocation pointed to a block downtown near 3rd and West that I had no business visiting at that hour. From our front door, Mueller Lake hides beneath trees that mean well. The Ring doorbell sees what the trees leave behind. I scrubbed through the timeline until the night turned blunt. At 2:41 a.m. the camera watched Marco in warehouse pants and a navy hoodie, laces tucked into his boots the way he always insists is safer. He slipped past the porch like an apology, a man with a bag slung over his shoulder, and that firefighter gait that assumes every minute has an assignment. The next clip at 3:03 a.m. showed a rideshare hovering at the curb, headlights cutting a small rule into the dark, a silhouette loading a flat object into the back seat of framed something, like a mirror or a fake painting that a staging job might need. The camera evaluated the movement as a squirrel for 3 seconds before it decided it cared. Paper makes a person believable. It also tempts you into thinking you're in charge. I printed the DocuSign audit trail, the HELOC wire hold confirmation, the ring screenshots with timestamps, and the last 3 statements from our joint account at UFCU. I added to the stack the Uber receipts that refused to be a glitch and the Peloton delivery notice from 2 weeks prior addressed to Unit 1412, 301 West Avenue, with both of our names clinging to the label like they belonged there. Peloton had reopened their layaway program. We had not opened anything except canned soup and the last jar of my mother's pickles. I tucked the stack into a binder I normally reserve for tax season. It felt like a helmet I did not know how to wear. I would love to say that this was the first time a quiet voice had noticed the wrong scent on a sweatshirt or the extra 6 miles on the truck when it should have been a quick HEB run. The truth is softer and worse. The dryer sheets that smelled like a boutique not ours had been there after a proclaimed late call, and the Headspace app on Marco's phone had logs that fit a man who had no time and too many reasons to make some. A second phone line with a number I didn't recognize appeared on our at&T account in November. Marco said the firehouse gym now did 2-factor sign-ins for equipment and he needed a line that could be public. The explanation sounded like the sneer of a tired comedian. Once, when Theo had an early release and I told Marco, he replied an hour later with a screenshot of a call schedule that didn't belong to his station, like he was proofing me instead of hearing me. I folded each of these into my planner like opportunities for me to try harder. The first public scene arrived, already dressed as celebration. Sunday lunch for Marco's mother at Matt's El Rancho is not optional in his family. You kiss the cheek meant for you, say the right thing about the right queso, and pretend the margarita is a sports drink. I brought the binder and 2 pens as if someone might ask me to officiate something. When the menus had been opened and then ignored, I slid the wire confirmation and the Peloton delivery notice onto the table next to the bowl of chips. I presented the DocuSign audit trail and the ring screenshots, the Uber receipt that declined to be abstract, and the UFCU statement showing a $2,400 cashier's check made out to C. Lewis with an apartment address stamped onto the memo line by a bored teller. Marco's mother looked at the paper the way people look at stray dogs you want to help, but you don't want the smell to follow you home. His brother made a noise like laughter, but not the welcome kind. Someone asked if I had considered that I might be confused about what DocuSign means. The waiter put a platter down so politely it felt like a bow. My mouth did the thing where you smile like a person just to free your teeth from clenching. Marco asked me later, in a voice that tried to be a soft wall and ended up being a thin sheet, if I believed that firefighters can be called out past midnight and that sometimes rideshares miss bill. I repeated our street name out loud in my head, and he reminded me that the city is large and good people get tired. What money does not explain outright, paper will try to finish. On Monday, a letter from the Independent Residential Association arrived addressed to E. and M. Alvarez, our last name combined with my first initial, congratulating us on our lease of Unit 1412 and reminding us that short-term rentals have specific steps. The letter included a fine schedule and a cheerful invitation to the monthly compliance meeting. The lease copy was inside, printed 2 days after Thanksgiving, unsurprising if you live with stress and a tradition of pretending nothing ugly can eat a holiday. My signature was there, accurate enough to be insulting, and a Texas driver's license scan purporting to be mine, but actually showing my face in a DMV photo from 2 renewals ago. The deposit had been paid via ACH from UFCU, reference in-depth DEP-1412, a code that took 10 seconds to find in our bank history and 10 minutes to make into a neat spreadsheet. I do not know if there is a heaven for neighbors who mind their own business until it matters, but if there is, Kay across the alley deserves a balcony. She is a graphic designer who runs on deadline adrenaline and oat milk, and she keeps an Arlo camera over her garage because she believes in data and caution. Weeks earlier, she had asked if Theo could water her succulents, which is how she noticed a man with Marco's backloading 2 boxes marked kitchen and my old toolbox into a Lyft at 1:28 a.m. One Friday, the Lyft plate number lived in her notes app, the timestamp lived in the cloud, the screenshot lived in my binder next to the Peloton notice. The photo made our forked life look like an advertisement for something I would never buy. I went to the Independent because I cannot sleep if I do not know what the floor looks like. The concierge desk forgives questions if you ask them in the voice people use for expensive furniture. The manager confirmed politely that Unit 1412 had a lease listing both our names and that 2 fobs had been activated. She implied someone had mentioned the idea of hosting friends and perhaps recouping costs, and then issued the phrase compliance reminder out of an abundance of caution. The digital record showed 1 fob used at 2:12 a.m. on a Thursday and again at 6:07 a.m. the same morning, which reads like a lie trying to catch a bus. I took the elevator up just to see the hallway, carpet that wants you to believe shoes are optional, door numbers with expensive fonts that pretend they deserve respect. I did not knock. I imagined a yoga mat in the corner and a grocery bag with freezer waffles, and I'd entertained the traitorous thought that this could have been meant for us if we believed more in the future than in the bill. It left my body as quickly as it arrived because I am still a mother who instructs her son not to touch every shiny thing. The drumbeat of new revelations insisted on tempo. Austin Energy, welcome to power letter for Unit 1412 with start date 14 days earlier. A P.O. Box confirmation email at the USPS. We've received your address change template listing a mail forward from our Mueller address to a downtown box. The change request had been verified with a code texted to a number ending in 6038. Our AT&T plan had a new line ending in that number. I filed another case at T Frau D-25,611, then went to the North Lamar store with my binder and all the energy of an apology someone else was too proud to deliver. A manager whose smile reminded me of long commutes and a fondness for order added a note that any account changes required in-person ID with the PIN reset to a number my body could remember even if my brain ended up on the wrong side of sleep. I bought Theo a new case for his school-issued tablet because he had broken his old one trying to show me how the world can be drawn in blocks. Twists multiplied like a story choosing me. The sitter, Ava, texted to say the school had called her instead of me to pick up Theo because his emergency contact had been updated in the portal with a new primary number I did not recognize. The number matched the 6038 line. I changed the contact back and sent screenshots to the principal, who returned protocols and the tone you use when you want to communicate that your job is not a suggestion. The PTA had a meeting that week to finalize the spring carnival. I sat at the end of the long table in the cafeteria under the Texas flag and a mural that makes bees feel political. I slid the welcome to power letter, the HOA compliance notice, and the USPS forward confirmation to the PTA president because schools never have enough proof that a parent is not a rumor. She looked at me like she was deciding whether to recommend a lawyer or a hug. Someone called a vote to change vendors for the ticket wristbands, and I raised my hand as if my body had not been requisitioned by another war. When I tried to imagine a benevolent version of this mess, the shape was always the same. Marco wanted a place to nap between shift swaps that wouldn't wake me or Theo. A friend needed couch space. A person in crisis required a spare key in the city that still pretends not to know that the cost of a kindness sometimes includes interest. When I asked him one night, careful with my tone like it might shatter, he told me I worried for sport, and that overtime can look like a building pretending to be a sculpture when you're tired enough to confuse nouns. He said I had been watching too many narrators on YouTube who can turn a missing spoon into a conspiracy. I wanted to believe him, because the alternative was a feral math I did not know how to do. The independent witness who put a nail in that belief showed up wearing khakis and a lapel pin. A human resources rep from the fire department returned my formal request for shift verification with a letter listing the days Marco had officially been at the station, the days he had swapped, and the days he had been on leave. The night of the DocuSign signature at 2:58 a.m., his badge had not checked into Station 14, contrary to what my stomach had been instructed to expect. He had traded that shift at 9:06 p.m. via telestaff and had been marked as personal leave with an allotment of 24 hours. The letter sat in my binder with the fob usage log from the Independent and the Uber and the Peloton, and made me want to buy a shredder just to feed it household items that had been lying to me. There are kinds of betrayal that make sense if you stare at them: an affair resolved into a single address, another family trying to fix an absence with receipts and rental furniture. Our mess did not ask for that kind of courtesy. A lawyer at a small firm off Burnett mailed the Independent and their property management company a notice that my name had been used on a lease without my consent, file ALV Res 419, and asked for immediate cancellation. The HOA complied after 2 emails and 1 call that involved me professionally repeating our property address to prove I existed. In the storage unit on Airport Boulevard that corresponded with the Lyft plate Kay had shared, I found a folded crib, a basket of sample-sized toiletries from a Yoba studio on Barton Springs, and a laminated sheet titled House Manual West Avenue with instructions for the washer in Unit 1412. Under the sheet sat a cheap guest book with 3 entries affectionately praising the river views and asking if the stroller might be repaired. There was also an envelope with a Tiffany receipt for a ring I recognized as an advertisement more than an object, because it existed in categories I do not live in. The matte black bag smelled like someone else's future. The next public scene happened by accident. The Independence Community Compliance meeting takes place in a multipurpose room with chairs that think they belong to people who never sweat. I attended because the HOA letter had invited us before the cancellation made it theoretical. A compliance manager reviewed city regulations regarding short-term rentals, posted the list of fines with a courtesy that would have been funny elsewhere, and asked owners and tenants to sign a pledge acknowledging the rules. I raised my hand and said, with a voice I barely recognized because it was steady, that my name had been forged on a lease, and that our HOA welcome letter and the energy welcome had arrived at my house, even though I had not visited Unit 1412 except in an elevator. I laid out a copy of the cancellation notice, the lawyer's demand letter, and the Arlo screenshot of moving kitchen boxes into a Lyft at 1:28 a.m. You can hear the sound of a room recalibrating. It sounds like pens trying not to be dropped. The manager asked if I'd like to attach my documents to the minutes for the record. I said yes, because lately that is the only record that counts. Not every twist arrived with an envelope. A woman named Sienna messaged me on Instagram, her profile a square of exercise gear and small breakfasts. She wrote that she hoped reaching out would clear the air regarding a situation with Marco and a plan for co-parenting scheduling that had confused her. She attached a screenshot of a text from a 6038 number welcoming her baby home after a brief NICU stay and reminding her to send me the insurance info for spouse confirmation. My hands shook in that controlled way you only expect when holding a ladder. I scrolled and found dates that married themselves to the fob times on my printout, overlapping like the worst Venn diagram. I wanted to reply with decency and rules. I also wanted to throw my phone into the lake and let a heron adjudicate. The healthcare axis cut through our kitchen one afternoon like the corner of a hard envelope. Austin Regional Clinic mailed a welcome to the family packet addressed to Sienna and household at Unit 1412, with a barcoded referral slip for a lactation consultant printed with our insurance group number and my name as primary. The note referenced a newborn immunization appointment scheduled for the following Tuesday at 9:30 a.m. The way the system had stubbed the situation into a format it understood a household, a plan, a primary made me feel like I had been assigned a role in a play that was already at intermission. I called our insurer and asked for a freeze on dependent additions pending in-person verification. The rep understood more than her scripts allowed. She added a flag requiring both parent ID for any future changes. She gave me a case number BCBS FAM-77321 and said she wished me a good day in a voice that sounded like she meant it even if she had said it 1,000 times. Walking the Springdale Green path that evening, the sky a kind of pink that makes you believe in easy endings, I drafted a letter on paper from my inventory because my printer was tired of carrying the weight. I wrote to Marco the boundaries I needed like ordinances. All joint financial activity suspended effective immediately on point and UFCU flagged for in-branch requirements with both signers present. The HELOC locked and my other accounts moved to a new bank where no one knows our names, any leases, utilities, forwarding requests, or subscriptions listing me canceled or my lawyer calls. All child contact information reinstated with me as primary, with Ava and my mother as backup. Any changes outside a documented plan would be grounds for filing. I requested in writing an itemized list of all addresses, storage units, and digital accounts opened in my name since October, selecting months that had proven themselves suspicious. I gave a deadline that made room for decency and not for stalling. I wrote a sentence addressing the rumor of another child, stating that I would not be a paperwork accomplice, that I would contact counsel regarding any fraudulent use of our insurance, and that whatever kindness the world owed a baby would not be paid with lies. I added informational rather than rhetorical. I had retained counsel, file number dialed into our life like a new kind of area code. The logistical part of the separation moved with competence that almost felt like relief. I opened a checking account at University Federal Credit Union under my business name and redirected my Etsy payouts. I recorded the teller's name and the branch because being a person who takes notes is a dignity I know how to wear. The HELOC wire never cleared. Travis County Title returned our funds to a frozen area where they could wait for my courage to thaw. The DocuSign envelope ID became part of the fraud report at the county clerk's office. CCFR-99,041, a related paper storm I consented to. A notary vendor emailed me a forensic summary explaining that my signature showed a high likelihood of mimicry, a phrase that made my name feel like a coat someone had borrowed without asking, and that a Google Voice number had been added to my two-factor options and removed minutes later. Our insurer locked the policy and flagged any dependent additions like they were border crossings. The independent canceled the lease and locked the fobs. The storage unit sent me a copy of the rental agreement with my business EIN. The security answer was Theo's nickname, the one I call him only when he is brave about something that does not require bravery. The humiliation had a shape, and now I could hold it. The emotional part did not move at all. Theo began to draw houses with 2 front doors. Kay left a bag of HEB strawberries on our porch with a note I pretended not to read. My mother called to ask if I wanted her famous chicken and rice, and I said I was fine because a new and distant part of me believed if I said it enough it would turn true. The PTA president emailed to say the carnival would borrow my color-coded wristband spreadsheet and that the custodian had found a lost mitten. She wrote, "I hope you're okay, and I hope you know the rest of us don't need to know anything to know we want you to be okay." I sat in our living room at 11:00 p.m., a time that used to be a treat, and tried to decide if being the person who prints everything is a virtue or a nervous system. I kept waiting for a single clean explanation from Marco that would make me regret the folder, the freeze, the rules. It never applied. He said he had wanted a place to sleep after doubles without stumbling over Lego. He said that a friend had needed a place for a stroller for a week. He said that the Pilaten was a favor to someone who had moved quickly or not at all. He said that the wire had been a misunderstanding that would have fixed itself if I had slept through it. He said overtime is a thief who likes to wear a suit. I heard these things and thought about the infant immunization appointment on our insurance, about Theo's emergency contact swapped without my permission, about Ava's text in the middle of her shift at the coffee bar telling me Theo missed me when he had a tummy ache. Decency began to feel like a coat I had worn out of habit rather than because it fit. I asked the internet once, late and soft so as not to wake up my whole neighborhood, the only version of a question that seems to matter when your life has been notarized into something you did not choose. Would you file for divorce immediately when you find receipts for a second home, a quasi-Airbnb with your name forged on a lease, a short-term nursery built in a storage unit, a hidden phone line added to your plan, a newborn dropping into your health insurance, and a wire transfer you did not make? Or would you move like a river looking for a channel, gather your child, your salary, your name, your tired mother, and pause short of a courthouse until the rhythm of your house learns its new beats? Which is the kinder math to amputate quickly so infection starves, or to splint what's left and walk carefully through the next year so the child doesn't stumble as much? My body leaned towards surgery. My gut has always loved a good splint. Our lawyer filed a legal separation with temporary orders for custody that made the invisible rules visible, as if decency were required to wear a name tag. The orders listed pickup times at the elementary school, forbade any out-of-state travel without written consent, and made any changes to emergency contacts violations rather than suggestions. OFCU added a statement to our accounts that any new external transfers require both signers in person. The HELOC now requires 2ID and the presence of a manager named Carol at the 51st Street branch, a fact I have memorized as if Carol were a new aunt. Our mail stop at the downtown PO. Box was removed. The postal clerk handed me a carbon copy of the request that had set the forward, and I saved it because the rubbery numbers looked like a cartoon, and I needed at least one thing in this story that didn't look like a knife. HR at the fire department called to confirm that an internal audit had flagged misuse of leave and that Marco would be placed on a performance improvement plan. The words were so generous that they almost seemed like a trick. A clause forbidding off-duty use of city-branded resources email, schedules, ID sat in bold on the letter I printed twice and saved where Theo could not spill juice on it. That small portion of accountability arrived like a small check that clears faster than you expect. After 21 days of normal that felt like camping, I discovered that I am the sort of person who thrives on recorded lists. A page on our fridge titled now replaced what might have been called Us. It read, rent for the Independent canceled, deposit refunded to OFCU, storage unit eminence 209 contents removed and donated except the toolbox, which I sanitized with the intensity of an apology at NT removed mystery line and set in person only changes, use a wire blocked, HELOC locked, Blue Cross freeze on dependent changes, Case B CBSFA -77,321 City Code Compliance SDR complaint closed. Note on file if Unit 1412 appears in listings again, The Independent fobs deactivated and cancellation letter attached. HR after shift verification printed and stored. Lawyer billing paid through this month. Theo emergency contacts verified at school and pediatrician sitter schedule written on my board in black marker so permanent it cries to be wiped. That list, written in my own pen and tape, was worth more than any apology I could have purchased. The moral fork did not sit somewhere else. It lived in our kitchen, pretending to be decisions about whether to make the soft scrambled eggs Theo loves on school mornings. When I told Marco about the separation papers, the house did not tilt. He did not yell. He did not confess. He sat with his hands folded like a man waiting for a test. He cannot cheat. He asked if he could keep his days with Theo at the same frequency while he figured out a place to stay that had a real kitchen. I said the orders told the truth, and that what remains for us is to live inside it without trying to find a side door. He nodded like a person who just remembered where the doorbell is. There is a detail I wish did not exist because of how self-pitying it makes me sound, and yet it continues to happen and therefore belongs here. Every few nights, around the hour the wire had been attempted, my phone still throws its glow onto our ceiling, the blue of urgency disguising itself as a reminder to drink water or the ping of a customer asking about the color called sage. I walk to the kitchen and pour water anyway because rituals are medicine if you repeat them enough. I pass the binder and try not to look because it contains a gravity that seems to change the weight of any room it enters. I check the porch camera just in case the light outside is the moon deciding to be rude. I watch a delivery driver gently place a box on our mat. Occasionally, a heron cuts across the sky and pauses on the edge of Mueller Lake to act like it invented persistence. When I run inventory for the shop and calculate shipping, I do it in my mind with Theo's voice narrating because he likes numbers when they behave. When I stage a starter home in Windsor Park, I place a housesplint in the light and think about the child who will not ask permission to swing their feet from a hard countertop. When Ava texts me a photo of Theo's art houses with 2 front doors that are the same and somewhat different, I don't correct him. I decide to believe that 2 doors can be a way a home tells the truth about itself. My mother dropped off a casserole with enough calories to make a cyclist cry, and I watched her put it in my fridge with the quiet competence of women who were never allowed to watch themselves be strong. Kay brings me a cup of coffee once a week and never asks for the story. She already knows it in the way neighbors do, not all the details, just the shape of the space it leaves. The PTA president asked if I wanted to take a year off from volunteering, and I said no because I need the schedule more than it needs me. I no longer check the Independence lobby camera on the public feed some residents run like their own TV show. I no longer refer to the storage unit as anything but a place where a bad idea went to sit down. I no longer keep in my pocket the screenshot of the text Sienna sent me because I decided I could only live if I believed in the truth. That does not require me to hold it in my hand every minute of the day. I keep the binder because if we go to court, it will be required that I prove I have lived this life and not just told it to friends at a kitchen table. That binder frightens me less now that it lives in our safe and not next to my planner where Theo might draw on it. Would you insist on burning the house down to save the family? Or would you remove the rugs that cause the falls and invite people to learn how to walk again? Would you trade a child's certainty in the ritual of pancakes on Saturday for the dignity of not being a liar? Would you be the person who reminds everyone, including yourself, that forgiveness is not amnesia, but it is also not a course requirement you can take once and graduate from? Sometimes when I sit at my desk between piles of missit planners and boxes that smell like accomplishment, I think of the image I cannot shake, a phone screen's square of light painting the ceiling with the bruised color of alarm. In it, I see the silhouette of a man walking softly at 2:41 a.m. Believing steel-toed boots whisper if you tell them to, A man who might have been a good person if life had not handed him a stack of keys and told him the sound they make is the same thing as responsibility. In it, I see myself, a woman who mistakes productivity for safety, who makes lists instead of asking out loud for help because paper doesn't tell you you're overreacting. In it, I see a boy drawing a house with 2 front doors and choosing to color both doormats the same shade of green. Not all things can be repaired with hardware and tape. Some require a season where you learn to trust your own handwriting again. Some require a legal pad and a low, competent voice that does not tremble when it says your name. Some require you to let a night turn into morning without opening the binder, without pulling another screenshot like a lever. The HELOC wire sits in a limbo the bank calls blocked, which feels like a friend standing in front of you at a party you never wanted to attend. The lease that pretended to know my signature lives in a file on someone's server like a ghost. On my walk around Mueller Lake at dusk last week, a heron lifted itself out of the water with just enough effort to remind everyone that grace is sometimes just muscle practiced into quiet. If there are omens, I am not educated in their grammar. All I knew was that for one small moment my body stopped thinking about case numbers. I went home and cooked the casserole and looked at my son over steam, and he told me a joke about a dog who forgot where he put his bone because he had too many bones. I laughed with my mouth and not with the apology I had been offering to no one. Later at 3:17 a.m., the phone lit up the ceiling with the gentle lie of an app reminder I had forgotten to reschedule. I didn't get up. The glow crawled across the room and then gave up. The birds that roost in the oaks behind our house shifted, as if turning a page. The house leaned a little like it always does. The binder in the safe stayed shut. The doorbell camera blinked red in the corner of my mind, patient, alert, willing to help if asked. I lay there, the ceiling painted with the memory of a wire that never went, and I let the room become itself again.